All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to give it a few minutes here just to let everybody get time to join before we start talking about our topic today of the real crime stories of email hacking, with probably the most exciting part, Ben Jones giving us a live hacking demonstration. Which I don't know if that's exciting or horrible, but
It can be both.
exciting to most of us, but also horrible to know how easy it is for it to be done.
Mhm.
So we'll wait till the top of the hour, which is in about 2 minutes here, and then we will get started. Everybody who's already on here, you'll see a question and answer section. So as we're going through the presentation today, if you have a question you'd like to have answered, feel free to put it in the question and answer section, and we'll be taking some time to answer some of those questions for you today. Got about 1 more minute before we get started. Busy day there today, Ben?
Oh, just a little bit. This is actually my second webinar today, but I wasn't
Oh,
hosting this one, hosting the previous one. So,
nice.
yeah.
Nice. Well, it is the top of the hour, so I think we'll get started. Thanks to everyone who's on here joining us today. We are going to be talking about the real crime stories of email hacking. We will also be getting a wonderful live email hacking demonstration from our email security vendor that we love and adore, SaaS Alerts, Mr. Ben Jones. Benz, would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. I am one of the sales engineers for SaaS Alerts. I come from an MSP background. I've been working at or for an MSP or running one for the past probably 20 years. And I've kind of done a little bit of everything and landed in cybersecurity. And when the opportunity came for me to join SaaS Alerts, I was actually a customer of theirs, and so I knew how they really tried to stay up with security, and I thought, I can help out many more MSPs by joining their team and get them to the same part that my MSP was at.
Awesome. I'm Aubrey Stone, owner, vice president, and the chief revenue officer here at CyberTools. We are an MSP, which stands for Managed Service Provider. We help businesses with their IT and cybersecurity needs. We've been in business for 25 years. I've been with CyberTools for 16 years. And I used to be a teacher, so this education is my passion. And the way that cybercrime continues to just evolve, and the things that I have seen it do to people's businesses, it has become a mission of mine and Phil's to get out there and educate people on what's going on and how they can protect themselves. So, Phil, would you like to talk a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Phil Horton. I am the account manager here at CyberTools. I've been with CyberTools for 8 years. I provide strategic business planning, virtual CIO services for our clients, talking about threat and what is our comfort zone, right, and cyber liability insurance. Kind of bringing all those compliance pieces in and making sure that we have a business plan in place for cybersecurity, for tech support, and that type of thing. I've been in the IT industry for 14 years.
All right, thank you. So unfortunately, today our topic is very needed. I don't know, Phil, in the last 2 months, how many email hackings have we dealt with?
The number is 8.
8. So, and most of these were not our clients, but a few of them were. One thing I want to impress right from the beginning is don't let anybody ever tell you they can 100% protect you from cybercrime. If somebody tells you that, then They have some stock and some gold somewhere that I don't know about. We cannot fully protect you from cybercrime, but what we can do is put in a defense mechanism that helps you be prepared to respond and allows you to ensure that you have your business up in a timely manner and you have the data that you need. So we're going to share some real crime stories today, and we are also going to get that live hacking demo that we talked about. So let's just get started with talking a little bit about what we're going to go through today. So we're going to be using this term BEC for business email compromise. You're going to hear me call it business email compromise. You're going to hear me call it email hack. Both of those I'm going to use interchangeably. We're going to talk a little bit about what compromises we've been dealing with. We're going to tell you what suspicious activity you should be looking for to know if you are the next victim. And then Ben's going to take it away and show us actually how the hackers are doing what they're doing. And after he gives us that live demo, we're going to talk to you about how we believe you should respond. One, if you think that you have some suspicious activity, what should you do? And also, how should you respond to what you're learning today? What pieces do you need to put into the business in order to make sure you don't fall victim to becoming the next victim of a business email compromise? Escalating email hacks. This is a huge growing concern for business. They say that 41% of organizations have experienced a threat of this sort. That email remains and continues to grow as the #1 email attack vector for a cyber criminal. So this is really the way they're trying to get access to your business. Your confidential information is through your email. And phishing attacks are among the top threat to email users. One thing that we have noticed in our team is that AI or a sales and marketing department in the cyber criminal world, one or the other, has become very sophisticated at making these email phishing attempts look real. What you used to be able to see as gobbledygook in the domain name and misspelling and grammar mistakes and problems, we're not seeing that anymore. Some of these attempts to get you to click a link or to fish for your information are so good that they can fool even the CEO of a company. The traditional definition of a business email compromise is when an unauthorized entity gains access to your business email account and uses that access to impersonate you or the legitimate owner of that account, and they do it to perform the business that seems legitimate but really is fraudulent. Let's talk a little bit about the scale of the statistics, the staggering numbers in the field of cybercrime right now. By 2028, they say the global cost of cyber crimes is estimated to increase by 69% to a whopping US $13.82 trillion. I don't know, these facts change every day. It's really hard to keep up with the numbers, but I once read that less than 0.1% of cyber criminals get caught, and they need about $80 to do what they do, and they can make upwards of $80,000. I don't know if that was a week or a month, but either one makes you disgusted, right? So 82% of breaches included cloud-based data. And these days, our email is cloud-based data. So that is what we're talking about today. Spending on cloud security over the year 2024 is expected to increase 24% and then to continue increasing year over year, because we're just going to have to start putting protections towards our cloud-based data as the cyber criminals are constantly getting ahead. It's like a game of cat and mouse for us. The good guys are constantly chasing the bad guys and trying to stay one notch ahead. So unfortunately, we don't see this as a dying industry. Right, Ben?
Yeah, especially at those kind of numbers. I mean, that's decent money. I mean, especially if you're talking about that much per month.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what all of this is, financially motivated. It's getting a quick and easy buck, and And like you said, most of them aren't prosecuted. Only the big attacks are even went after. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think if you report like this sort of crime to the FBI, it has to be over a certain dollar amount before they even really investigate. I think that's like 200,000,
Yeah,
which for
I
small
think you're
businesses
right.
can be enough to close your doors. I mean,
Right.
$200,000 loss is pretty significant.
Yeah, and most small businesses, I mean, we're seeing an increase in cyber liability policies being taken advantage of by small businesses, but many of them that don't have that kind of protection, a shutdown that costs that sort of financial, it can shut their business down. It is very sad.
Yes.
So let's talk about who the attacker is. Most commonly, we have more than one person that's involved in an attack. The initial attacker is the person that's harvesting credentials or information. They usually are in executing the initial phase of this attack, like we said, either through that phishing attempt or a malware delivery or something like that. The initial attacker typically then sells the credentials to a specialist. We see these for sale a lot on a place called the dark web, which is a dark place. I've had to see that place before at IT conferences. It's not a place I ever want to see. There's lots of horrible things for sale on there, organs, I don't know, just horrible stuff. But also this is where you find these credentials that this initial harvester gets your credentials or your information, and they usually put them for sale there. There's other vectors that they sell this information through, but that's probably the most prevalent one. They sell these credentials to a specialist who then later will be using these for another phase of the attack. Occasionally, an attacker will be an insider of that same business, or sometimes the attack comes from a vendor that you work with or a trusted partner or customer that you're working with that has had their email compromised. So sometimes we're not sure exactly where this attack is coming from, but those are the different types of avenues that they take. Why do cyber criminals target your email? Let's think about the vast amount of personal data that we store in our emails. We have login credentials. No, 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 do not do that. If it's not encrypted, don't put your login credentials in your email. We have financial statements that we email back and forth. We have private correspondences where we offer pieces of information about ourselves that those hackers are after. This makes email a very lucrative target for cyber criminals. They are going after financial gain, and like we said before, it is a low cost, high return game. Some of the common scams that we're seeing are CEO fraud. So this is phishing and socially engineered attacks aimed at the CEO or acting as if they are the CEO. Inside of the CEO's mailbox, sending things out on behalf of them, trying to get people to respond to that. We've also seen things where they're asking for privilege escalation. The MGM attack is sort of an example of this. So that was just somebody who found an employee of the MGM Grand on LinkedIn, called the help desk and pretended to be that employee and asked for a password change so they could gain access to the system and shut down the entirety of Vegas. Same thing, Phil and I were at a technology conference not too long ago at the Omni Hotel in Nashville, and a very similar event happened where the entire Omni Hotel chain across the entire United States was shut down by a cyber attack. Similar thing for a privilege escalation. We see things in forms of vendor or customer invoice scams, and we're also seeing things in ransomware or document theft inside of your business email. A lot of us who have our business email in the cloud, like Microsoft 365, we also store our documents there. So sometimes getting in through that avenue of your email allows them access to your cloud storage of documentation, and then they can put that document for ransom and request a ransom in order to let it go. So Phil's going to go ahead and we're going to now share with you some of the real stories that we've dealt with. Phil, take it away.
Yeah, so give me a second here, and let's just think about if you're a business owner and you wake up on a Monday morning and all of a sudden you see one of your clients paying a $175,000 invoice that you didn't send. Now, let that sink in. That is just gut wrenching, and I can't even imagine, the reputational damages this has between this particular construction company and their client. So what had happened was 3 months prior, to business owner clicked on a link that they thought was legitimate. It then stole the credentials and the token for their email instantly. As soon as clicking on a link, gone. That attacker then sat in this mailbox, watched, and knew that this company was about to send an invoice to their client for $175,000, and went ahead and then created a perfect example of their invoice, just changing the routing information, sent it to that client, and then that business owner wakes up Monday morning and sees an email saying, "Hey, thank you for your help. We really appreciate your services. We've paid the invoice." That business owner is like, "What's going on?" Right? I've never sent an invoice. So now there is this situation where you have, insurance company, cyber liability insurance company for client, cyber liability insurance company for construction company are all fighting. Attorneys are involved, right? Where's that money coming from? So now we're out money for the client, we're out money for the construction company. It's a huge financial loss across the board, and it's not even talking about the amount of reputational damage this has done.
And the cyber liability in this case was a savior, right? Because some of the remedies will be covered by that policy. However, what a lot of people don't understand is that the cyber insurance wants to do their own investigation. So there is nothing happening with this $175,000 until that investigation is over. And at the end of that time, may or may not have a payout. A lot of cyber liability policies have very neat, nicky little bullet points that you better be doing in order for them to not find a loophole to not pay out your claim. And if you've gone through and marked yes, 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 and one of those answers is no, and during this investigation, that cyber liability policy or that cyber liability company says, "Hey, you said you were doing this and our investigation has found that you didn't," then they find a way to try not to pay those claims. So not only does it this investigation ties up the money for quite some time, you also may or may not have that amount covered at the end. It also depends on what sort of insurance you have and what kind of coverage you have. So very important things to think about. I'm going to go over the next one. We dealt with a church, not a client of ours, but called us out of the blue. Another thing that had happened was a church employee clicked on a link unknowingly. Now, let me tell you that you might have clicked this link 3 months ago. You have no clue. You even clicked this link. Nothing, no red balloon goes off. No, confetti doesn't shoot out of the cannon to say, "Hey, you clicked the link." You don't know that you clicked the link. And then the link, like we said, the information goes for sale, and it could be months before the damage is done. And in this case, again, the email token is stolen from the browser. Now, we keep saying that, and Ben is going to be showing that what a hacker does to steal an email token out of the browser and what that means. But so they stole the token, they sold it to another attacker. The attacker gains access to the mailbox from another country. Now, just like somebody who's going to rob your house is going to sit outside your driveway for a week or a month or however long it takes to understand your comings and your goings, and when does your husband get home, and does it look like he's tough, and all those kinds of things, right? The attackers do that in the back of your mailbox as well. They watch what's happening. They study your patterns. They want to see who your contacts are. And they set up rules in the back of your mailbox. And nobody has a clue that these rules have been set up, because typically they're really good at not only setting up the rule, but covering their tracks that the rule's been set up. They will have an automatic rule that deletes email out of your trash, that takes things and moves it so you can't see what they're doing. So they've set up rules in the back of this mailbox that said anything that had to do with the word invoice, financial statement, credit, a lot of terms like this. and send it to this outside email address. So meanwhile, all these things are being forwarded out to the hacker. The hacker is studying it, and the hacker realizes that the church had just had their parking lot paved and a new roof put on their building, and that was the bill for that service was $150,000. So the attacker creates an invoice that looks just like the one from the company. So I'm going to make up a name here for confidentiality's sake, but let's say the pavement company's name was Hess. So they make up a Hess invoice that looks exactly like the Hess invoice they had been intelling, but they put an extra S and they make up a domain name and they put an extra S in that domain name. Then they send from the Hess email address with the extra S an invoice that looks exactly like the Hess logo and everything else, and the church pays an ACH transaction that is laid out on that invoice of where they're to send it. And then a few weeks later gets a notice from the paving company saying that their invoice is delinquent and wanting to know why. Unfortunately, in this situation, there's no cyber liability insurance, and the church is out this $150,000 and is trying to figure out how they can now prevent this from happening again. Bill, one last one here.
Yeah, so here we are. We're the CFO of a company. I'm just going about my day-to-day activities, and I click on a link to something that I think is legitimate. But the problem is I'm storing all my credentials in the browser. So sometimes we're not just after tokens, right? At the click of a link, I can, scan your entire computer. I can pull credentials from your browser. And so that's what happened here. So we have a CFO. In their browser, they store everything. Or Google's like, hey, would you like to save my credentials? They're just click happy yes on that, and that's never a good thing. Those things are not protected. Those are easily taken. I mean, just as a click of a link, it's gone. And so what the CEO or the CFO had is that they had their remote access credentials to their workstation stored within Google, and so that bad actor then used that in the middle of the night to gain remote access to the CFO's computer. And then installed malware on the network and completely compromised and encrypted their entire data set. All their financial information was held at ransom. All their employees' payroll information held at ransom. So in a situation, they are in a kind of a tricky spot where, because now they have to, they have to tell their employees, hey, all your banking information, routing information, all that's been compromised, your social security number, like everything we have on you as an employee has been compromised. And the same thing for the clients that they work with, right? ACH information, all that stuff was compromised. So there's a lot of reputational damage was done here. And luckily in this situation, this business had a proper backup solution in place. So we were able to come in and restore all their systems to this backup. But that then got them out of paying this ransom, but they still have to kind of deal with the potential financial ramifications that they're going to have from their clients and on their employees, right? Because it kind of leaves them open for potential lawsuits and things like that.
Yeah, and no cyber liability in place in this business, and was not a former client of ours, and due to the expense of all the things that were happening, chose not to move forward with more investigation and more security protections. And we're not sure if this business is actually still in business anymore because of that attack. So, so some real serious things that we've dealt with, very disturbing, really hard to watch hardworking people be taken advantage of like this. So we talked about some of the things that their approaches that they're using, these phishing scams, their malware, where they steal everything that's stored in the browser. But weak passwords is another thing that we need to mention here. So because your data is, if you're using a cloud-based email, which most of us are these days, is in the cloud. Anybody that knows your email address can get it off your website or can guess it based on your domain name. Then they're going to start trying to guess your password. Some of these bad actors are, right? Now, if you're using combinations like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's a really easy password to guess, right? Also, they might use bots to crack your password. So that bot just churns around at possible combinations of letters, numbers, and to see if it can crack through your email as well. So weak passwords are really a thing that we cannot afford to have anymore. We actually suggest that you have an encrypted password manager. Now, again, it is not a 100% guarantee that no one can get into that encrypted vault, but just like that bad actor at your house, if you have floodlights, a guard dog, a security system, and all of those things, they're going to move on to the next house. That's what we're trying to create with our cybersecurity strategy, is just enough walls to make it so difficult that they move on. And an encrypted password vault is one of them. If you have a weak password and you're using it there and they get it, they will go to delta.com, amazon.com, every .com they could, paypal.com, and use those credentials to see if they can get in. So you want to have a strong password and you want it to be varied. I once read a thing that said, yes, your password must contain a drop of blood, a feather from a peacock, a unicorn horn. And, it's kind of funny, but it is also kind of true, because you really do have to try to manage all these passwords that we have to manage in a better way than we are. The other thing we do want to mention is that there's insecure Wi-Fi connections that sometimes they can take advantage of. If you're a remote worker and you're traveling around and you're going into Starbucks and you're hooking your laptop up to the public Wi-Fi, anybody can be on that network and be phishing for what you're doing. You want to make sure wherever you are, you're on a secured internet connection. So without further ado, Ben, if you don't mind, I think it's time for us to go ahead and turn this over to you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can give us this live demo.
Sounds good. All right. So I'm going to have to essentially share kind of one window at a time here. So I'm going to start off with what your average user would see, which is Outlook.com. In this instance, I got an email sent from one of my employees. And what I did is sent it and shared this email through SharePoint. So the email came from Microsoft. So it kind of bypassed any sort of spam filters that I may have had in place. I kindly review at your earliest convenience. Resignation letter from Roy. So I'm going to click on this. And what I have here is just a Word document. But this may look perfectly legit, but really it's just an image with some blurred out text and a fake window. And the only thing that you can do is click on it. It's just a big link. So I'm going to click on this link here. And it's redirected me to a site. It's called notlegit.site. So just a little backstory. I'm using an open source software that's running on a cloud server that cost me about $20 a year. And I registered a domain for about 90 cents for a year. And that's my only investment in this so far, other than a little bit of creativity with Photoshop. So this is telling me, okay, I need to verify my identity. It looks completely legit, right? The only thing that you can tell, you can't tell there's a difference between this and the normal Microsoft sign-in other than the URL. So I'm going to look up my credentials here. I should have had this already ready.
It's amazing how authentic it looks.
Yes. I'm going to do a little bit of magical copying and pasting here, and I'm going to sign in and prove that I am who I say I am. I am Douglas. I'm going to paste my password in. So now it's reaching out to Microsoft, my software, which I'll show you here in a second, and it's telling me to prove I am who I say I am. So I don't know. I know you can't see it. I'm not sure if you can see my camera too much, but on my phone, I'm being presented to the Microsoft little authenticator app here, and I need to type my code in. So I've typed my code in. And I'm just going to stay signed in.
So even though it's a fake site, it knows to send you, because it's stolen that token, it knows to send you that authenticator request.
It's what's called an evil proxy. So it's what a proxy server does is it takes you and it does the communication for you, but it acts as a middleman. So it's also considered a man in the middle attack. So my job as the bad guy is done. It's telling me to sign back in, but I don't really care. I've got what I wanted. I don't care what happens now. I could redirect them off to Google and it doesn't really matter. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing and I want to show you what the threat actor sees. Okay, can you guys see that okay? I know it just looks like a bunch of text with an evil guy at the top right. Okay, I'm going to increase this text size just a little bit. This is what I saw when Douglas signed in. I captured his username. I captured his password. I don't care how complex it is. It looks like a good password. You can also see the MFA method used, which is the phone app notification. So what I want to do now is I want to pull the sessions that I've captured, which I only have one here. So I'm going to do sessions 44. This is what I care about, this cookie right here. That's the only thing I really care about. I can see the IP address. I can see his username and password. As a threat actor, what I'm going to do is I'm definitely going to take this password and I'm going to try this everywhere. Like Aubrey said, I'm going to try this at BB&T. I'm going to hit all the bank sites. I'm going to see if maybe that's where your account is. And hey, if it is, cool. That's awesome. But for now, I'm also going to take this little cookie right here and I'm just going to select it and copy it. So yet again, through some movie magic, I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to open up a new web browser here. And this is just an incognito window. Sorry for that flip-flopping.
It's all good.
All right, so I want you to see this. I'm going to type in office.com and I'm going to go to sign in. Now, I wanted to show you this because I want to show you that I'm not signed in. It's asking me for my username and password. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to this little cookie editor right here. This is completely free. I'm going to import what I just copied out of my little Linux terminal there. And I'm going to import that. And so now I'm going to hit refresh. Notice anything that I didn't have to do? I didn't have to authenticate. I didn't have to do any sort of MFA. I've literally piggybacked off of Douglas's sign-in. And so now I'm in his account. But not only am I in his account, I am going to hit his email. I'm going to download anything I see on SharePoint or OneDrive, anything he has access to. And the method that I'm showing you here is much more manual. The threat actors, they also have automation. So this is actually done all automatically. From the phishing email to the credential harvesting, this is done within a fraction of a second that I'm showing you here. This is just much more dramatic and interesting and shows you that it can really be done pretty easily and with very, very minimal investment, less than $80. I think I spent, like I said, about $20 for the entire year. So not too bad. I'm getting a good return on my investment here.
And that's what, when we talk about the token being stolen, that's what we just saw.
Yep, that cookie is your token. It includes your encrypted password, your basically your keys to your account. I've just essentially what you've done is you've handed me the key to your house. I've made a copy of it, and I'm unlocking the door for you. You're walking in, but I have my key and your key in my hand too. Just made a copy of it.
And how does that token get stored in that browser?
In this browser right here, the only thing I'm doing is just it's what's called a cookie editor that allows me to see every cookie that's on my computer for a specific site. And I've just imported it. I've just imported that text.
But how does my token get stored in my browser? Is it by a setting I click, or is it just automatic every time I log in?
Automatic.
Automatic.
Yep. Yeah, you don't see any of this. If you used this little cookie editor and went to like Facebook or something, you could see all the different cookies that Facebook already automatically loads into your browser. And it's all encrypted. I mean, most of the time it doesn't even make much sense. But you can see there's a bunch of things in here. There's A domain name. Okay, well, that domain name has been specified by the cookie as being this on Microsoft.com. My client ID is right here. It's all, it's all encrypted. And I can't really tell what it is, that's in this cookie, but Microsoft's encrypted it, but I'm just taking a copy. I'm just using it.
Reusing it.
Hmm?
Yeah. So you don't have to decrypt it in order to use it. You just have to
Oh
steal
gosh,
it.
no. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I copy and paste and I'm in.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's even a web UI for this that will automatically handle all the stuff that I did in the background. I really took my time here to kind of explain things, but if I was legit bad guy trying to do some damage, it's all automated. It's all through a website. I can export them all, put them in a zip file, head off to the dark web and say, hey, I got these tokens for 500 some people. I'm accepting bids at like $1,000.
Yeah.
And it's easy money for the threat actor. He doesn't have to do anything like setting up mailbox forwarding rules or exfiltrating your data. He's really there just to make a quick buck. And the guys that are buying it, they're the ones that are doing the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it's very difficult to manually know that this has happened, right? I mean, for an MSP like us, to know that somebody has logged into your mailbox from outside of the country or the city or the state, I would have to be manually digging through pages and pages of logs
Yes,
in
for
order
each
to
user.
know that that's what's happened. If I didn't have like a piece of software that we use like SaaS alerts
Exactly.
to automatically be monitoring these environments and seeing suspicious activity.
Correct. Yes. Nobody has time to kind of watch through all those logs. And a lot of people that have conditional access policies set up to prevent people from signing in from, outside the country, you gotta factor in I didn't have to authenticate at all. I piggybacked off of this person that signed in from their normal location. So you may not
Right.
even see it in the Microsoft log that it happened. And that's the thing about SaaS alerts. We're monitoring after they're through those gates, what are they doing inside of Microsoft? And are they doing it from a device we're expecting to see?
Right. Right. So, what do you look for to know if something like this has happened for you, happened to you? You're going to see some suspicious activity at some point. Usually, something suspicious starts to happen. You might see a password reset request come through. In one of the cases we shared earlier, there was an authentication request that kept coming through on a cell phone. And finally, the guy just hit it because he was in a meeting and it kept popping up. And he was just finally like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? And he hit the authentication, which actually let the attacker into the mailbox. You're going to see strange emails or social media messages sometimes. You're going to see sometimes an unknown device or location that the email account's being logged into. But again, you're only going to see that if you're digging into the back end of your email account and you're looking for that. You might see spam or phishing email that's sent from your account out to other people. Sometimes this is how we get alerted to that. We'll get a client that calls in and says, hey, our vendor said that they got this email from us. Can you guys take a look at it? Because we didn't send this. And then once we start tracing back, we realize, oh, yes, there was something sent out of this account. You might see some changes in account information. Sometimes you'll get a data breach alert. I feel like so many of us get so many of these data breach alerts these days. Do we even really feel the same anxiety that we did the first time we ever got one, right? It feels like every single bit of my data's everywhere. Red Dot Target and Victoria's Secrets. I mean, everything, right? Every single thing has ever been compromised. It's hard to keep up with those. So let's just recap a little bit here. The business email compromise life cycle, breaking it down. So they credential capture any method, most prevalent really right now is that they're stealing tokens using phishing as a service. They sell their credentials and then the account takeover occurs. They establish email rules and forwarding. They live off the land and identify the fraud targets and start planning their attack. And then they execute their attack. And then they start that cycle all over again and identify new targets and repeatedly go through it. Data breach facts, according to IBM X-Force, it takes about 212 days. This was in 2023 to detect a breach. I'm sure this number is same or longer in 2024 as they get better at covering their tracks. Another source says 197 days to detect a breach. So how do you identify it early? You need continuous observation of account behavior and recognition of activity. So you need to know if something doesn't fit the typical pattern. You need to know if there has been classic actions like email forwarding rules set up, external address forwarding, if there's been modified MFA methods. Sometimes they will modify the way you're doing your multi-factor. Have they added a new SMS phone? Have they added a new authenticator app? Sometimes they will modify account admin roles. They will modify account access from unusual locations and account access from a new device. Any of these activities individually can be seen as, innocent and maybe even legitimate or overlooked. But if you're monitoring them as a whole and they're being logged, then you can automatically begin to observe a sequence and start to realize that this is an indicator of a compromise. When we catch it early, accounts can typically be resecured prior to any loss. Once we started seeing this rise in business email compromise, it made us say, what do we need to do? And that's when we began looking at partners to or vendors to partner with, and why we chose SaaS Alerts, because they monitor the email environment. Ben, do you want to talk just a little bit about what the product does and how it works?
Certainly. There's several different things that we can do to prevent token theft, and that's monitoring this activity that is coming from that's happening inside of Office, and comparing it with the devices that we're typically used to seeing. And if we ever see any sort of deviation from that or activity from outside of your established location, that's when we can take an action. And that's one of the primary ways that we identify token theft, is looking at the management software that you're using, that CyberTools is using, and saying, okay, well, this device is where we're used to seeing activity from. This is the IP address, the host name, everything checks out. But all of a sudden, now I'm seeing some activity from this strange IP address. It looks like it's a VPN. It's been known to be doing malicious things, and they're creating these mailbox forwarding rules. They're downloading a lot of files. They're sending a lot of emails. This doesn't look normal. I'm going to go ahead and lock this out completely and let CyberTools know.
Yeah. And so, what action can you take if your email is hacked yourselves? If you don't have somebody acting on your behalf, you can change your password immediately. That's the first and foremost thing to do. Implement two-factor authentication. Contact your email service provider. Notify your contacts. Let them know that you believe that there's some malicious things out there. Get a virus and malware scan run on your computer. Conduct email rule and setting analysis. Go in and analyze the backends of your mailboxes and see what's going on, and review and secure any other accounts that might be sharing that password. Like we talked about, if you're one of those who uses the same password across lots of venues, you're going to want to make sure you change that immediately. Some of the things we're recommending people do to protect against business email compromise is definitely, if email is your number one vector for attack, then your employee is your number one risk. I'm a number one risk myself. I'm not saying your employees. I'm including myself in that. So employee awareness training is really important. What should they be watching for?
True.
How do they know this is happening? What are the new types of threats that we should be seeing? There's all sorts of email security tools that can be put in place that help to keep spam out of your email boxes, that help to detect phishing attempts. You want to make sure that you have a process in place in your business to verify requests for account changes. A second line of verification, if somebody emails me and says, I need you to change, I've gotten about 4 of these in the last month. Hey, I'm changing my payroll information. Can you please update it to my new bank account? We have an internal process that we will not change your bank account without a phone call to you verifying that this is really you. So you want those processes. And then you really want to be monitoring account behavior, any of your what they call SaaS, software as a service accounts, right? Monitor that behavior. Is there suspicious stuff happening? You want to automate blocking on compromise detection. So if there is like been shared, if we all of a sudden see somebody's trying to log in New York and you normally work in Puyallup and you're not on vacation in New York, let's shut that down. Let's not allow people to log in from those other places. And there are other things we can do. We can make tokens expire more frequently. Microsoft is also pushing out some changes to their product. They're going to be forcing it on everybody in the very near future, and we're seeing it kind of start to roll out. But they used to do MFA certain ways, and now they're saying we're only doing it one certain way because the old way of doing MFA is phishable. And so they've changed the way that they do MFA to make it less phishable. So if Microsoft or your IT company is asking you to change your MFA, it's really not just to be a pain. It's because they're trying to stay that one step ahead in that game of cat and mouse.
And Aubrey, I can't emphasize enough that the number one point that you made here with the employee awareness training, that's such a valuable thing to put your employees through, because it could have easily been prevented, my attack, by someone just looking at the URL. And it's not always going to be as easy to tell. I mean, they're very clever, zero instead of an O, or a one instead of an L, but just it's like I said, don't click anything in emails. That's another good thing.
Yeah, or verify, from the person sending it. If they're asking you to send money, call them and ask them.
Yes.
You get a phone call. This doesn't have to do with business email compromise, but just another tip. Someone calls you and says, I need you to do this, and it seems a little fishy. Hang up, Google your bank's number, and call that number and verify that it's really them. These people are definitely on the rise.
Well,
and
if you ever get a call from your employee asking you to change something and it's a strange request, just know that the deep faking voice is definitely on the rise as well. But the one solution to that, hang up and call them directly. I can spoof any phone number that I want to. I can say that I'm calling you from the White House, but if you call the White House, it doesn't work the other way.
Yeah, and at Cyber Tools, we're actually putting a product in place here where we can verify people by sending them a code, because that is the way the MGM attack occurred, right? That someone looked on LinkedIn, saw that this was an employee, called the help desk of the MGM and said, hey, I need my password changed. So we're trying to put in that extra verification that we know it's you that's asking to make these changes.
Nice.
So to keep loss prevention to a minimum, monitor your accounts for unusual behavior, harden system configurations, carry cyber insurance. I can't impress that enough. I'm sorry, everyone, that I'm delivering the news that I'm asking you to buy another piece of insurance, but unfortunately, it could save your bacon in this situation. Have really strict IT usage and data sharing policies. Lots of business owners, they just don't have time for this stuff and they don't want to deal with it, but you don't want to be forced into dealing with it after you've dealt with having to call all your clients and tell them that you've compromised their data. It's much better to spend the time ahead of it than it is on the other side. Train every single team member, especially the C-suite. C-suite employees tend to be so busy. They, even though they're usually a little bit more clever with technology, they may be busier and they might miss that extra S in the domain name. So you really have to make sure you train everybody in phishing recognition. So, hey, we are at the hour, so I want to give a little bit of time here for anybody that might have a question. Phil, do we have anything in our question and answer?
Not yet, but if anybody wants to go ahead and put something in there.
While we're waiting for that, I'll go ahead and just tell you a couple things that we're going to offer to anybody who has joined our presentation today. We are going to be sending anybody who registered today our free report on business email compromise. Just a follow-up to what we shared here today with a little bit more information on the suspicious activity you might see, what you can do to respond. We will be emailing that out to anybody who has attended today. We also are giving away free email security audits for 3 businesses. The first 3 businesses who seek us out and respond, the audit will help identify vulnerabilities and ensure your email security is able to catch an intruder before it's too late. So you can either call our office or scan this QR code, and we will go ahead and make sure that you can be put into the consideration of having that email security audit.
Yes, Levi, this has been recorded. You will get a copy of it. I think it's a great thing, even for you to pass on to your other staff members, so they can see exactly, you kind of get an understanding exactly what to be looking for, and understand really how it's done.
Yeah, it will go on our YouTube, and there'll be a link to it on our website. We also are going to start a series like this where we do a webinar each month covering a different topic so that we can get awareness out there of the things that we're seeing and what people need to do to protect themselves. So, any other questions?
Glenn had one. He said, if we have geofencing in place and conditional access policies tying logins to compliant devices, would that prevent the kind of token stealing that was demonstrated? So there's a couple of things that can prevent the token theft. FIDO keys are resistant to that, as well as Microsoft released a passkeys that allows you to do the same kind of FIDO security on your device, but it has to support it. It's only in newer devices right now. Locating conditional access policies, not really, because like I said, I'm not authenticating from outside. I'm piggybacking on your authentication that you've already done. And a lot of these people, the attackers are smart, especially if they're targeting your specific business and they really want in. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start up a server that's very nearby you. And when I do sign in, it's going to be a VPN. It's going to be as close to you physically as possible. So that's, I'm not saying don't use them. They do catch like attackers.
Some of them. Yeah.
And I'm also saying, I'm not saying don't use MFA, because it's all about defense in depth, and then it's making sure that you're going to catch some people with this protection, some people with this protection, and SaaSalerts will come to make sure that everybody is actually coming for where they're supposed to be.
Right.
And I think, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, so the cybersecurity is about walls and layers, right?
Yep.
And it's even something we implement today. Somebody could come up with a solution for it tomorrow, and so we want to, in kind of talking about the geo blocking and kind of restricting access onto devices. There's ways. Everything we do, I guarantee, like I said, there's gonna be a way tomorrow to get around it. The idea is that we're putting so much in place, we're putting so many walls in place, making it so difficult for somebody to actually act on a breach that it's just not worth their time, and they move on.
Or it's not as easy as it normally is, and they move on because it's not worth their time. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like to think of it as Swiss cheese, right? When you layer Swiss cheese, I think Amy shared this with us, Ben, and I loved it, is you layer Swiss cheese on top of each other, and no matter what way you stack it, there's going to be some holes. But if you start kind of layering more and more in different ways, then at some point the holes get smaller and smaller, and you hope that person can't slip through that smallest hole.
I love that. That's good.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody joining us today. And if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and get off. We will be posting this up on our YouTube and putting a link to our website. So be looking for that. And if anybody is interested in understanding a little bit more about our email security audit, reach out. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ben, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Yes,
I'm glad to be here.
Have a great weekend.
You too, guys. Bye.